The sound of a human body hitting the floor is different from any other sound. It's a dull, heavy thud that seems to vibrate through the souls of everyone standing nearby. When Mara's knees hit the checkered tiles of the diner, that sound was the only thing audible in the entire room. The clinking of silverware stopped. The hiss of the espresso machine seemed to pause. Even the dust motes dancing in the slanted morning light appeared to freeze in midair. Mara wasn't looking at the faces of the people around her. She was looking at the scuffed black shoes of the man standing over her. Her hands were pressed against the cold, greasy floor, trembling not from the fall, but from a shame so hot it felt like a sunburn spreading across her neck and cheeks. She hadn't come in here to cause trouble. She hadn't come to steal. She had walked through those glass doors with her heart in her throat, solely because her 5-year-old daughter had woken up crying from hunger pains, and her 3-year-old son had stopped asking for food altogether, which was terrifying. But when she had whispered her request, just asking for something, anything, that was going to be thrown out at the end of the shift, the reaction wasn't pity. It was disgust. And then it was physical. A rough shove. A loud berating voice. And now she was on the floor, her dignity scattered like the sugar packets on the tables. But before we tell you what happened next, and before you see how the tables turned in a way no one expected, we have a small request. If you believe that no mother should ever have to beg to feed her children, and if you believe in the power of standing up for the vulnerable, and please take a second to like this video. It helps us spread these messages further. Share this story with a friend who might need a reminder that good people still exist. And please subscribe to our channel, Kindness Valley. We share stories here that prove compassion can change the world. Also, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing how big our Kindness Valley family is growing. Now, to understand why Mara was on that floor, you have to understand that she wasn't always this woman. She wasn't always the person people looked through or looked down on. Just 18 months ago, Mara Collins had a life that looked probably a lot like yours. She had a small, sun-drenched apartment on the south side of the city. She had a job as an administrative assistant that paid the bills, even if things were tight. And she had Sunday rituals of pancakes and cartoons. She was the one who donated canned goods to the food drive. She was the helper, not the helpless. But poverty is a slippery slope, and sometimes all it takes is one loose stone to send you sliding all the way to the bottom. For Mara, it was a medical emergency, a severe infection that kept her out of work for 3 weeks. In an at-will employment state, 3 weeks was 2 weeks too long. She lost the job. Then her car's transmission failed, meaning she couldn't get to interviews for new jobs. The savings evaporated in a blink. The eviction notice wasn't just a piece of paper. It was an hourglass running out of sand. Fast forward to this morning. They were staying in a temporary shelter that kicked everyone out at 7 a.m. sharp. The air outside was biting. A harsh winter chill that cut through the thin coats Mara had managed to salvage for the kids. She had left them with a kind older woman at the library for an hour, promising to come back with breakfast. But her pockets were empty. Literally empty. Not a dime, not a penny. She had walked past the diner 3 times before working up the nerve to go in. It was called Rick's Stop, a place that smelled of bacon grease, old coffee, and stale cigarette smoke clinging to the regulars' jackets. It looked like the kind of place that might have a heart. It looked rough around the edges, just like her. She was wrong. The man behind the counter was Ronan. He wasn't the owner, but he acted like he owned the very air the customers breathed. Ronan was a small man in spirit. The kind of person who felt bigger only when he made someone else feel smaller. He had been having a bad morning. The delivery truck was late, the coffee machine was leaking, and he was nursing a headache. When he saw Mara walk in, he didn't see a struggling mother. He saw a nuisance. He saw someone who didn't belong in his clean, well, relatively clean, establishment. Mara had waited until the counter was clear. She approached quietly, her hands clasped in front of her to hide the shaking. "Excuse me, sir," she had said, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry to bother you. I don't have any money. But my children, they haven't eaten since yesterday morning. I was wondering, do you have any burnt toast? Or maybe eggs that were cooked wrong? Anything you were going to throw away?" Ronan had stopped wiping the counter. He looked at her, his eyes scanning her worn-out shoes, her messy hair, the desperation etched into the lines around her mouth. He didn't see humanity. He saw a target for his frustration. "We aren't a charity," Ronan snapped, loud enough for the booths nearby to hear. "If I feed you, I have to feed every vagrant who wanders in off the street. Get out." "Please," Mara pleaded, stepping closer, tears pricking her eyes. "I'm not asking for a fresh meal. Just scraps. Please, sir." That was when Ronan snapped. He came out from behind the counter, his face red. "I said beat it!" He reached out and shoved her. It wasn't a gentle guide to the door. It was a hard, aggressive push to her shoulder. Mara, weak from not eating so her kids could have the last few crackers the day before, had no balance. She stumbled back, her feet tangling, and went down hard. And that brings us back to the silence. Mara lay there, the impact radiating through her hip and elbow. The humiliation was worse than the pain. She wanted to disappear. She wanted the floor to open up and swallow her whole. She waited for someone to say something. Surely someone would speak up. Surely one of the men in the booths, or the waitress holding the pot of coffee, would say, "Hey, that's not right." But fear is a contagious disease. The regulars looked down at their plates. They stirred their coffee. They pretended they hadn't seen a grown man assault a malnourished woman. They didn't want trouble. They didn't want Ronan to turn his anger on them. "I told you to get out!" Ronan yelled again, standing over her, feeling powerful. He pointed a shaking finger at the door. "Get up and get out before I call the cops." Mara tried to push herself up. Her arms felt like lead. She sniffled, wiping her nose with her sleeve, preparing to crawl away if she had to. She had failed her kids. That was the only thought in her head. I failed them. Ronan took a step toward her, perhaps to grab her arm and drag her. But he froze. A sound had been building outside, a low, guttural rumble that vibrated the plate glass windows. It was the sound of thunder, but distinct, mechanical, and rhythmic. Engines. Lots of them. The bell above the diner door jingled, a cheerful little sound that contrasted sharply with the tension in the room. The door swung open, letting in a gust of cold air. Ronan looked up, annoyed that someone was interrupting his power trip. But the annoyance on his face quickly drained away, replaced by a sudden, pale wash of fear. Entering the diner was a man who looked like he was carved out of granite. He was huge, easily 6'4", with shoulders that spanned the width of the doorway. He wore a leather cut over a hoodie, patches stitched across the back that read, "Iron Guardians." His beard was gray and thick, and his eyes were hidden behind dark sunglasses, even though it was cloudy outside. He wasn't alone. Behind him came another man, then a woman, then 3 more men. They poured into the small entryway, a sea of black leather, heavy boots, and road-worn denim. The air in the diner shifted instantly. The smell of exhaust and leather mingled with the bacon grease. The leader, a man named Elias, took off his sunglasses slowly. He had kind eyes, but right now they were hard as flint. He looked at Ronan, who was still standing over Mara. Then he looked down at Mara, who was curled on the floor, looking up in terror. Elias didn't yell. He didn't scream. He simply stepped forward. The heavy thud of his boots was much louder than Ronan's shoes had been. "Is there a problem here?" Elias asked. His voice was deep, a gravelly baritone that seemed to come from the center of the earth. Ronan stammered. The bully in him shrank instantly when faced with someone who could actually fight back. She was just leaving. She's disturbing the customers." Elias looked around the room. He looked at the customers who were aggressively staring at their eggs. "Is she disturbing you?" he asked a man in the nearest booth. The man shook his head rapidly. No, not at all." Elias turned his gaze back to Ronan. "Seems she's only disturbing you." One of the female bikers, a woman with bright purple streaks in her hair named Sarah, bypassed the men and went straight to Mara. She crouched down, her demeanor softening instantly. "Honey, take my hand," she whispered. "Let's get you off this floor." Sarah helped Mara up. Mara flinched, expecting roughness, but Sarah's grip was steady and gentle. She dusted off Mara's coat and guided her to the nearest booth, the one right in the center of the room. "Sit," Sarah said kindly. Ronan tried to protest, his voice squeaking. She can't pay. You can't just seat her." Elias took 2 more steps toward the counter. He leaned in close to Ronan. He didn't touch him. He didn't have to. The sheer proximity of the biker made Ronan press his back against the pie display case. "I think," Elias said very slowly, "that you're confused about how hospitality works. This lady is hungry. And from what I saw through the window, you just put your hands on a woman who was already down. Now, where I come from, that's not just rude. That's a reason for a very bad day." The diner was dead silent. "We're going to order breakfast," Elias continued, his voice leaving no room for argument. "And she is going to order whatever she wants. And you are going to cook it. And it's going to be the best meal you've ever made. Do you understand?" Ronan nodded. He couldn't speak. He just nodded and scrambled back into the kitchen, his hands shaking so badly he nearly dropped the spatula. The bikers took over the diner. They didn't act like hooligans. They acted like a royal guard. They filled the booths around Mara. Elias sat opposite her. He didn't ask her why she was poor. He didn't ask her for her life story or judge her choices. "I'm Elias," he said. "The loud one over there is Sarah. That big guy is Tiny." Mara wiped her tears, still shaking. I can't pay you back. I just wanted scraps for my kids." Elias's face softened. The hardness vanished, replaced by a sorrowful understanding. "Where are the kids?" "At the library, down the street," Mara whispered. Elias nodded to Tiny. Without a word, the massive biker stood up and walked out the door. "Tiny's going to go make sure they're okay. He'll wait outside the library until we're done here," Elias assured her. "Now, order." When the waitress came over, a young girl who looked terrified but also secretly thrilled to see her boss put in his place, Mara hesitated. "Order for the kids, too," Sarah said from the next booth. "Get it to go. Get the pancakes." "See, kids love pancakes," Mara ordered. She ordered eggs, bacon, toast, and 2 orders of chocolate chip pancakes to go. While they waited for the food, the atmosphere in the diner changed. The fear dissipated, replaced by a strange sense of community. The other customers began to look up. They saw that these scary bikers were just people, fathers, mothers, brothers, who had a code of honor that the manager lacked. One by one, the regulars stood up. An elderly man in a plaid shirt walked over to Mara's table. He placed a $20 bill on the table. "I saw what happened," he muttered, ashamed. "I should have said something. I'm sorry I didn't." Then a woman from the back corner came up. She dug into her purse and pulled out a gift card for a grocery store. "For the little ones," she said, pressing it into Mara's hand. Ronan watched all of this from the pass-through window in the kitchen. He watched as his authority crumbled, not because of violence, but because of kindness. He had tried to isolate Mara, to make her an outcast. But the bikers had turned her into the most important person in the room. He realized, perhaps for the first time, that true strength wasn't about pushing people down. It was about lifting them up. When the food arrived, it was hot and fresh. Ronan had cooked it perfectly. Fear is a great motivator for quality control. Elias paid the bill. He didn't just pay for Mara. He paid for everyone in the diner. He walked up to the register where Ronan was standing, looking at the floor. Elias leaned in one last time. "You're lucky we walked in when we did," he said quietly. "Not for her sake, for yours. So, because if you treat people like trash, eventually you get thrown out with it. Be better." They walked Mara out of the diner like she was a queen. The sun had broken through the clouds. Tiny was waiting down the block, giving a thumbs up. Mara turned to Elias, clutching the warm bags of food against her chest. The smell of the pancakes was intoxicating. "Thank you," she sobbed. "You don't know what this means. You saved us." Elias smiled, and he looked like a giant teddy bear. "We didn't save you, Mara. You're the one fighting every day for your kids. We just leveled the playing field for a morning." One of the bikers, the one named Tiny, walked up and handed Mara a helmet. "Library is a bit of a walk," he grunted. "Hop on. Let's get this food to the kids while it's hot." Mara looked at the bike, and then back at the diner where Ronan was watching through the window, looking small and defeated. She climbed onto the back of the bike. As they roared down the street toward the library, Mara didn't feel the cold wind. She felt warm. She felt seen. For the first time in months, she didn't feel alone. When they got to the library, the kids were waiting. Their eyes went wide seeing their mom jump off a motorcycle. And when she opened the bags, revealing the steaming pancakes and bacon, their squeals of joy were louder than any engine. The bikers didn't stay long. They checked the tires on the bikes, gave high fives to the kids, and slipped a thick envelope into Mara's coat pocket before she could protest. Inside was enough cash to cover a deposit on a small apartment and a month of rent. It was a collection they had taken up among themselves in the parking lot. As the Iron Guardians rode away, disappearing into the traffic of the city, Mara sat on the library steps, watching her children eat. Her daughter had syrup on her chin. Her son was humming a happy little tune as he chewed. Mara looked up at the sky. The world was still tough. She still needed a job, but the crushing weight on her chest was gone. She had been reminded of a fundamental truth. Evil is loud, but kindness is stronger. And sometimes, help arrives on two wheels, wearing leather and looking like trouble, only to be the biggest blessing of your life. Ronan, the manager, never forgot that day either. Legend has it, he became a quieter man, a fairer man. He learned that you never know who is watching, and you never know who might walk through that door next. But he learned that the person you humiliate today might be under the protection of an army you didn't know existed. This story isn't just about bikers or pancakes. It's about the choice we make every time we see someone suffering. Do we look away, like the customers initially did? Do we attack, like the manager? Or do we step in, like Elias and his crew? We hope this story warmed your heart as much as it warmed ours. It's a reminder that we are all just one bad day away from needing help. and one good decision away from being someone's hero. Thank you so much for spending your time with us here at Kindness Valley. We truly appreciate every single one of you. If this story made you feel something, please don't leave without hitting that like button. It really makes a difference. Share this video with your family and friends. Let's make kindness go viral. And if you haven't already, click that subscribe button and join our community. We have one final question for you before you go. In the comments below, write the word guardian if you believe that we should all look out for each other. Let's fill the comments section with that one powerful word: guardian. Until next time, remember, be kind, be brave, and never look down on anyone unless you're helping them up. See you in the next video.